بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم يا عليم علمنا من علمك ما ترضى به عنا ولا تؤاخذنا بما تعلمه منا. اللهم حققنا بحقائق العلم وخلقنا بخلق الحلم واغفر لنا يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. اللهم أخرج من قلوبنا كل قدر الدنيا ومحلنا الخلق يميل بنا إلى معصيتك أو يشغلنا عن طاعتك أو يحول بيننا وبين التحقق بمعرفتك الخاصة ومحبتك الخالصة. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. They say وفي الخواتيم بركة. In the endings are great blessings. So we seek them out in this the final lesson on Adaab Suluk Al-Mureed by Imam Al-Haddad. We'll begin with answering a few questions that have been piling up, and then we'll go on to the last couple of chapters which deal with searching for a murabbi, a sheikh, and the benefit of being with the righteous. So with regards to a few chapters ago, we discussed the how a murid is one that is forgiving of others if they harm him or her, and while they reserve the right for justice, the higher state is to forgive. And so the question was with regards to people who make dua against non-Muslims, specifically non-Muslims of any type. So for example, you'll find in some Imams will make a dua against all Christians or all Jews or all non-Muslims, and sometimes in very, very harsh terms and very harsh words. What is the view on that, and what is the prophetic way? And of course we understand that there is dua. One has a right to make dua against one who is harming someone, but to make a blanket dua over everybody is not the prophetic way. I have a friend who's American Muslim, and he went to this masjid once, and this very fiery sheikh is making the dua at the end of the khutbah, and he says to him, and then he makes dua against all the people of America, and may Allah bring down the earth under their feet and destroy their homes. And he says, this man is making dua against me, against my family, against every single person that I know, and then they're Muslims there. This is people who often it becomes people who use their own hatred and anger and vent it and find religion as a way to vent it, and this isn't the prophetic way. And we know what the Prophet did to people who harmed him. We know the famous story of the Jewish woman who used to put garbage in front of him and choke, and one day he didn't find it in his way. He didn't find these things, so he went and visited her, found she was sick. Now, did the Prophet ﷺ ever make dua against people? We know that he did in very specific points. For example, the hadith of Bi'r Ma'una, when he sent, some narrations say 40, some narrations say 70 of the Sahaba, from the best of the Sahaba. These were very, very good people, very righteous people, and they're known to be people of the Quran. He sent them to some tribes in Najd in order that they teach the people the deen, and they were betrayed. And they were killed, every single one of them. And when the Prophet ﷺ heard about this and heard of this betrayal against his companions, he actually made dua, al-qunut, against the perpetrators. But if you notice in the seerah, it's very interesting. The Prophet ﷺ would never, and from his shama'il, he would never get angry and never seek revenge or ever be in any way angered by anything that was an attack against him as a person. So for example, you'll find people who came into the mosque, a man who came to the mosque who told the Prophet, by the scruff of his neck and really shake him and ask things of him. And the companions were seething. They took the man off and they said, should we, and the Prophet forgave the man. People would they'd say harsh things to him, they'd harm him, and the Prophet was forgiving. But if anything, if there was anything that was dhulm, was oppression towards another human being, was in any way violating the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or the rights of people, they say لَمْ يَقُمْ أَحَدٌ لِغَضَبِهِ, he would become extremely angry, not for his sake but for the sake of Allah. Another question about do people have a right if one is being harmed because of or discriminated against or harassed for being Muslim, or then does one have a right to defend oneself? Does one have a right to what should one's response be? And of course it's the right of every human being to defend themselves and to keep away from harm and to keep away from the places where that is happening. And it's a tribulation, and it's something that like the Imam Al-Haddad says, that will afflict a person from time to time. And sabr is always the dawa in every case. Being patient while taking every possible measure, every means to keep oneself protected. One must take those steps, but through all of that, sabr and ihtisab, and there's great reward in that. And we had a question about riya, and sum'ah, how some scholars you'll have, because we talked about Imam Nawawi, who used to sit in very small gatherings of students, and if there were ever more than 8 or so students, he would hurry up and leave for fear of what it would do to his heart. But you have others who would literally have Imam Abdul Qadir Al-Jilani, for example. You'd have the entire place was completely full. The mosque was completely full with people. But these are stations and these are ranks, and every person knows their heart. And the relationship between a person and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is such that it's a very personal thing. And some people, some people are in a state where, for example, their teacher will tell them, "Khalas, if you're teaching, stop teaching for the moment." Why? Because maybe they see something in their heart that's a lack of sincerity, or that an inflated ego from the state that they're in. And this brings us to today's topic, and the last couple of chapters, where the Imam talks about the benefit of keeping good company and looking for a teacher. And he says, you must take the greatest care in keeping the company of the best people, and attend the gatherings of the pious and the righteous, the abrar. And we mentioned previously the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, who tells us that the likeness of a righteous person and an unrighteous person is the likeness of the seller of perfume and the person the blacksmith who blows the bellows for the fire, to keep the fire alight. And that the righteous person, a person who accompanies the righteous will always find a beautiful scent from them, or they can purchase things from them. There's always, in any transaction with a righteous person, you're always benefiting. You're never harmed. However, with an unrighteous, with an evil person, that even by just being near him you could be burnt. Just by being near him you'll find a horrible stench, whether it's by words or by actions or by hasad, or by even the state of the heart. And they say in Arabic, man jalasa janas. If you sit whoever keeps company of a person will be like them, will turn to what they're like. You know, if you sit with the awliya, you'll want to become a wali. If you sit with the fusaq, you'll want to become, your heart will tend towards fisq. And so the Imam is bringing this to light, that it's very important to keep that. And you'll find that, especially with adults as well as children, but if it's noticeable with children, that immediately you see it. If a child is sitting with a good child is sitting with children who are not so, it'll affect him straight away. You'll see it in their behavior immediately. And so this is another indication of the power of one's peers, old or young, on the state of one's relationship with Allah. Then he said, after your company is good, he says, then search with the utmost concern for a good guide, yani a teacher or a sheikh, who, then he gives us 9 attributes of what makes a good teacher, what makes a good sheikh, a guide, a spiritual guide. And this is for someone who wants to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who wants to get to the highest ranks. They must have a teacher. And the likeness of it is the likeness of any other profession or branch of knowledge that someone wants to excel at. If you want to reach a state of ihsan in anything, whether deen or dunya, you need to have what? An excellent teacher, a teacher who's reached perfection. So for example, if you want to become the best architect, you go to the best school for architecture. Why? Because in it are the best teachers of architecture who've reached the greatest skill in that profession, who have practiced, who have actualized the fundamentals and the every aspect of that profession, such that you're able to learn from them. If you want to be a good doctor and you want to specialize, you go to the best specialists. If you want to, even if you are sick and you need a specific operation, if you need heart surgery, you'll seek out the best surgeon that you know of. And if you seek to rectify your heart, if you need spiritual heart surgery, if you need to rectify your heart, then you need to search for those people. It's just a given. If you want your state to be rectified with Allah, if you want to be as they say, a professional seeker of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, someone who makes it, this is their entire goal in their life, is to reach a ma'rifah of Allah, then you need to seek out people who've done this. You need to seek out teachers. So what are the qualifications? What does one look for in searching for a guide? He said the first is that that person be a pious and righteous. That outwardly they are mutahaqqiqeen bil-shari'ah. That they are known to be, and you see them to be, people who follow the wajib, who keep away from the haram, who do the mustahab, the mandub, and to keep away from the makruh. Someone who follows the outward sharia intricately. And then he says a man of guidance and good advice. In other words, someone who has wisdom. Someone who is able to, because not every righteous person is a guide. Just like not every architect can teach architecture. You can have the knowledge. I remember when I was in school, and we had some very, some of our teachers were clearly very, very intelligent and knew exactly what they were doing, and they knew the ins and outs of their particular topic. But when it came to teaching, some of them were just absolutely just did not know what they were doing in that time. So the Imam is saying, not only do you look for a pious and righteous man, but someone a man of guidance, who can give guidance and good advice. And he says, who has knowledge of the laws of Sharia. This is important. That not only is this person righteous and follows the Sharia, but he has intricate knowledge of he knows the Sharia. Okay, he follows for example, he follows a madhab and knows it to a good degree, so that he is able to discern that which is haram, that which is halal, this was mandub, and knows these differences, and understands, because there's a famous saying, they say, whoever goes on the path of spirituality without following Sharia, without knowing the Sharia first, will become heretical, will be a person of heresy. Why? Because they don't know the fundamentals of the Aqidah. So for example, a person can have all these a spiritual experience and suddenly start talking about things that are just completely unacceptable in terms of our basic understanding of the divine. And the saying goes on, it says, and whoever goes on the path of suluk, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and does not and follows the Sharia, faqad tahaqqaq, he has truly realized the deen, the tradition. And countering that, someone who only knows the outward form of the Sharia but does not trying to rectify their heart and go on a path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then faqad tafassaq, then that person will be wayward, because they haven't purified their heart. And more often than not, these people will and many people who go on that path will use the deen to their own ends. So this person needs to be a pious, righteous man of guidance and good advice, who has knowledge of the laws of the Sharia, has trapped, because we have a deen, if we go back to the hadith of Sayyidina Jibreel asked the Prophet about Islam, Iman and Ihsan. And a person to be a guide to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he must have knowledge of all three. He must have the knowledge of Iman, sound Aqidah, firm, with sanad, muttasil, and have taken his knowledge from teachers, to the Prophet ﷺ. He must have firm knowledge of the Sharia, of the fiqh, in one of the four schools, either Hanafi, Hanbali, Maliki or Shafi'i. Have studied it from teachers, who studied it from teachers right back to Sayyidina Rasulullah ﷺ. And he must be a person of sound spirituality, and have taken this spiritual path from teachers all the way back to the Prophet ﷺ. So and this person who has knowledge of the laws has traveled the path to Allah. In other words, this person has been on the spiritual path and he's reached the end. He's someone who's devoted their life, who has enacted and has traveled the journey before you. Because you can't have a guide if you want to go to, if you want to take a guide when you go on holiday to Peru, you need to have someone who's been there before, and someone who knows exactly where to go and what to do, and which, on the way, which stops to go to, and which places to keep away from. You need to keep away from this neighborhood, or you really need to go to this place because it has great food, or outwardly we can draw that. That metaphor, the idea, we can draw it to a spiritual guide, someone who's already been on the journey, who knows the pitfalls. He knows where to stop, where to stay, what obstacles will come and how to overcome them. So this person has traveled to the path of Allah, and a man who has tasted and knows the truth. In other words, this person has traveled the path and they've reached Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, reached knowledge of Allah. Which is established. Where did we get this from? We get it from the hadith of Jibreel, when the Prophet was asked about Ihsan, and he said, "An ta'bud Allah ka'annaka tarah, fa in lam takun tarah, fa innahu yarak." That you worship Allah as if you see Him. That's maqam al-mushahada. For if you do not see Him, then He sees you. That is a state where your heart is so alive that not a moment goes by that you're in ghafla. You are constantly alive with the dhikr of Allah and the knowledge of Allah. And the reality of it is that this is an experience that can't be, a person can't tell you what it means to have reached and tasted and knows the truth. They can't tell you exactly what that experience is, but it is the ultimate, it is the knowledge of the divine. It is the true knowledge of the beloved. And just as, you can't explain to a person the taste of honey, you can't explain to people these things. They're experienced. And so this person has to have traveled the path and reached and tasted and knows the truth. One of my teachers was telling me about one of the salihin that he was with. He said, we were asking him about this fath. We were asking about this ma'rifah. How, what is it like? They really wanted to, what's it like? Tell us about it. What does it mean to have reached Allah and have knowledge, true knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and have reached the state of Ihsan? And the Shaykh said, what am I going to tell you? And he said he had a cup of tea in front of him, sweet tea. And he took it and he sipped it. He said, it's like this. I can't explain to you what that tastes like unless you have tasted it before. So then he says, the sixth attribute is that that one must seek a man who has perfection of mind and vastness of breast, si'at al-sadr. Perfection of mind. So a person who is able to, it goes back to someone who is able to interact and deal with people and have the ability to, there's a great book, Signs on the Horizons, where it's in English, where this man, rahimahullah, he's still alive. He tells the stories of all the salihin that he's met from the Muslim world. His name escapes me. But one of the things he says the awliya, what they do is they act, he noticed that with the salihin they act like spiritual filters. He says that people from all walks, he said, I sat in the gathering of one of these great sheikhs, Abdul Qadir al-Saqqaf. I sat with him and I saw people from all around the world, all different states would come to him, and they'd talk about, and they'd sit with him and they'd converse and they'd tell him about what their ailments were, what spiritually there was wrong, or even outwardly what was troubles that they had, and he'd make dua for them and he'd speak to them. And he said he acted like a spiritual filter, that he would take a person and he would help them, and that person would always come out in a much better state than they were before. And this goes back to these salihin. The person has that perfection of mind, the vastness of breast, that they're able to deal with these the differences in the people. And then one of the reasons that they can do that is that these salihin really have, the fact that they've attained spiritual perfection is that, they empathize with people and they feel with people, but they've reached a state where they understand the dunya and know exactly its place compared to true reality, compared to eternity, compared to the akhirah. Just like when you come to a child and that child comes to you crying, and you're, as a father, you know this, your children will come to you and they've fallen over and they're crying, and you'll come to them and you'll take care of them, but you're not, and you empathize with them, but for you it's not a big deal, because ultimately Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this will pass, this will come to pass, ultimately things will get better. And this is the state of the salihin. They see that bigger picture and they're able to come in and help spiritually and help people along this path. The seventh, he said, wisdom in management. And this goes back to the same thing, that they have hikmah. And hikmah is the ability to put things in their rightful place, to give everything its due, not more or less. If they praise someone, they will praise someone to the extent that is necessary. If they advise someone, they will advise that person with the utmost hikmah. So they'll advise them either indirectly, so that person knows that the Shaykh wants them to know something, or directly, but it will be privately. So for example, and this is the prophetic sunnah, that the Prophet, when he wanted to point something out, he wouldn't go to someone and say, do this, or why did you do this? He would say it in a gathering in front of everybody, مَا بَالُ أَقْوَامٍ يَعْمَلُونَ كَذَا وَكَذَا وَكَذَا. He would say anonymously, there are certain people that do such and such and such and such. And he'd never point something out. And the prophetic sunnah is that when the Sayyidina Anas radiyallahu anhu, he said that I served the Prophet ﷺ for 10 years, and not once did he say, why did you do this? لِمَا فَعَلْتَ كَذَا وَكَذَا. Not once was he angry. Did he become angry with him? Not once did. Imagine 10 years, and not just let's take one of those attributes. Not once did he say, the Prophet tells me, why didn't you do this? Or why didn't you do this? I mean, just imagine the character, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he'd reach to say, we can't go 5 minutes without, if one is a teacher, you can't go 5 minutes without, why are you late? Why are you this? Why are you that? But the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his hal, his tarbiyah was, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you'll find that the true teacher is someone who follows the guidance of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And one of my teachers, Sheikh Abdullah, he once we were reciting Quran, and we reached a sajda, and so every time we reached sajda, we'd stop, we'd prostrate, and I would prostrate, and then I'd get up straight away, and he saw me once doing that, and he says, so you follow the madhab of the Ahnaf, who see that you shouldn't do the salam, salamu alaykum, salamu alaykum. Whereas the Shafi'i, not like the Shafi'iyya where they, and so I knew, he knows that I'm a Shafi'i, he knows that I follow the madhab Imam Shafi'i, but he didn't say, by the way, the sunnah in the Shafi'iyya is to do the salam. He pointed it out in a very subtle, I knew immediately, thank you, Shaykh, you reminded me. So this is wisdom. This is the ability to really impact people and affect positive change in people, without being confrontational. So this is the seventh, wisdom in management. Eighth is knowledge of the ranks and status of mankind. So this person must understand the different levels of people. Must be able to discern, have the basira, the ability, insight to see someone and know what he's about, and as a result be able to deal with that person according to his state. So for example, the Shaykh, if he's sitting with a group of his best students, or people who he knows who are strong on the path, will maybe make a great deal about about Qiyam al-Layl, for example, and waking up and doing Qiyam al-Layl, and he'd talk about but maybe if he's sitting with another group of people, he doesn't mention that, and maybe he mentions the benefit of just waking up, of Salat al-Jama'ah, for example. These are two ranks of people who are still weak, still on the beginning of the path, and people who are, and the same thing for the inward reality of people, that he's able to see that this person, this specific person, his issue is with riya. Okay, he has a serious problem when it comes to riya. So he knows how to deal with him with that regard. Such and such a person has a different kind of problem, so he knows how to deal with them and can can provide the spiritual medicine that that person needs. Knowledge of the ranks and status of mankind, and the ability to discriminate between that which is in them due to their instincts, innate qualities, states, statuses and states. So this follows on from the 8th. And this comes with, this is the basira that we were talking about last time. It's to do with the firasa. And they'll say, they say one of the mashayikh had this wealthy merchant who came to him and he said, tell me about sadaqat as-sir, being able to give sadaqah but without people knowing, keeping it secret or silent. I want to do it, And the shaykh told him, the shaykh saw his state and he says, not yet. You won't be able to. So no. The student insisted. He insisted on it. And so the sheikh told him, because he asked the sheikh, who are the poor families? Give me the names of some poor people that I can do sadaqat sir with. And he says, he says to the mureed, the student, he says, you haven't reached that level of sadaqat sir. He wasn't telling him don't give sadaqah, he was saying, sadaqat sir, you haven't reached that stage. He said, no, tell me. So he tells him, and 1 week goes by, and he's in the majlis, and he tells the sheikh, yeah sheikh, tell us about sadaqat as-sir, about the benefit of sadaqat as-sir. Tell people about it. And the sheikh smiles, and then the 2nd week goes by, and he says, yeah sheikh, tell people about the benefit of sadaqat as-sir. I see people don't do it and don't know the benefit of it. And he says, you know what, I don't want to show off or brag or anything, but I give to such and such a people and such a people, and this is just to give people motivation so that they can do what I do. And the sheikh started laughing, and he told me, he said, I told you hadn't reached that stage yet. And so, has the ability to discriminate between what is in them due to their instincts, innate qualities, statuses and states. Now, if a person finds a teacher with those qualities, and that's a very, very, very high standard. He says, if you find the person with those preconditions, attach yourself to them and depend on them. Just like if you don't find someone, we'll go back to our analogy, you don't find someone who wants to become that master architect, see a great school or a great, and not want to apply to, and not want to be attached to that teacher or that professor or that school. The same thing with spiritual affairs. When you find that a teacher so described, attach yourself and depend on him. Give him, and now this is a very important thing we'll read it, then we'll explain it in detail. Give him command over all your affairs and take his advice and suggestions in everything that concerns you. Follow example in everything he says or does, except in those things which are specific to his status as a sheikh. Now this is regards to what? This is regards to a person who's fulfilled the previous qualities. And what does he mean, give him command over all your affairs? In other words, all of your spiritual affairs, everything that has to do with your spiritual well-being, then that person should be what? You should take his advice on these things. Because that person knows exactly, he's taken the path and he knows exactly what needs to be done at every point. Except in those that are specific to his status as a sheikh, like for example what the sheikh does in mixing with the general public in their daily routine, in the way that they speak and etc. And in the different, maybe that sheikh will deal with people who have come for his advice of different ranks, people who are in a state of open sinfulness, and people who are and other things. Now, should a disturbing thought enter about him enter your heart, then you should strive to cast it out of you. If for example, for no reason you have a su' dhann about something that you see, or some thought enters your mind that maybe he's not quite right, maybe he says, and this is a baseless thought. It's a baseless thought. It's just coming to you here. Maybe it's from shaitan, from your nafs. Then you should strive to cast it out of you. And if you're not satisfied or able to do so, for example, if it's something, if maybe you saw something that didn't quite add up, then you go and speak to him directly and say, such and such has occurred to me, and I saw this, and he can explain this to you. Maybe it can be easily explained. So you can get rid of that thought. But if a person, he says, similarly you should also inform him of everything that occurs to you, especially in all matters that are concerned and related to the path of Allah. With regards, for example, visions that one has, that these are important indicators to the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For matters, for example, to do with, and the different shuyukh have different ways of dealing with it. So some shuyukh have will have private meetings with the murid, and they'll speak to them about I'm having trouble with such and such an issue, or such and such a sin, how should I get rid of it, what should I do, and they'll give them advice. In other ways, the Hadrami tradition, for example, what they'll do is they won't rely so much on that, but really they'll rely on just keep the company of the shaykh, and just going on the spiritual path, and keeping good company and striving in adhkar and good works will kind of untie those knots and straighten out the kinks and purify the heart as time goes by, without focusing on specific things. And he says you should be circumspect and cautious that you're not just obeying the shaykh publicly and obviously when you know that he can see your obedience to him, but rather privately as well. And this again goes back to the idea that if a person has a physical ailment and they go to the doctor, Allah, for example, if someone has diabetes and they go to the doctor and the doctor says to them that, you should keep away from sugar and you should stop drinking sugary beverages, then that person says yes, of course, and then behind his back, what does he do? He gulps down that gallon of Coke. Then there's no benefit in that. And the same thing spiritually. If a shaykh, for example, gives whatever it is that he does, and that murid doesn't follow that and disobeys the shaykh, then they're not going to get spiritual benefit from that. And then he says, do not approach or meet up with another shaykh who is apparently known to take people on the path of Allah unless you have your shaykh's permission. This goes back to the different teachers. Some shuyukh prefer that the kind of want the murid to stay under the guidance of that shaykh, so that they can follow a specific regiment or series of practices that they know will benefit the murid, and will tell them don't sit with another teacher or another shaykh, because maybe it will, you'll lose focus, or it will affect you in some way and not keep you focused on what you need to do. Other shuyukh will say no, will say, you can go and sit with any righteous person you want to, and this goes back to the discretion of a true teacher, a true master. You should also refrain from asking the shaykh to show miracles, karamat, or that he reveals to you what you secretly think. And this is sometimes what some people will do, to test the shaykh. I'm thinking such and such, will the shaykh mention that to me? Maybe he will, maybe he won't. But the thing is, many of these karamat that happen, and we said that as aqeedah we believe in the karamat, and quite often these karamat will happen will happen to that wali without him or her being able to control them. And the Imam says the extreme limit of a saint, of a wali, is that Allah reveals to him some of the ghaib, some of the hidden natures, some of the time. Maybe they'll get, kashf for a specific thing, maybe at other times they won't. And one should not do that, because that's not the point. The whole point of it, essentially what you're doing is the point of a guide, a spiritual guide, is someone that really can help you follow the path of the Prophet, follow the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Is that person doing so? Do you, in the company of that shaykh, if you are in that company, do you feel after you sit with him that you are inclined to do and motivated to do good, and that you incline away from evil, that you're motivated to worship? If that's the case, this is fantastic. This is what you want. If that's not the case, then there's an issue somewhere. There's a problem. And some of the Salihin, they used to say I would find myself that my motivation and himmah in worship would be diminished. So I would go to and look upon the face of Muhammad bin Wasi', and then I'd go back, and it would motivate and would give me himmah that would last me a month, just by being in that person's company. That's why Ibn Ata'illah, he says, لا تصحب إلا من ينهضك حاله أو يدلك على الله مقاله. Don't befriend, don't be in the company of someone except that person who their state elevates you, gets you up, and their speech will direct you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he goes on, he says, sometimes the seeker may wish to test the shaykh and appear before him to ask the shaykh to reveal to him his own thoughts and condition. And he says sometimes the shaykh will refrain from doing so, because their inclination will be sitr. They want to veil people. The Salihin will maybe see someone who has a black heart, someone who has very horrible thoughts, and their state is rahmah for people, and they'll veil that and they'll keep it covered, and they will guard a person's secret and hide his state, from what they are, from the public. Now he goes on, he speaks specifically about the conditions of this perfect teacher. Again, we're not talking about every person who claims that they're righteous, or someone who just makes a claim that, oh, I'm a shaykh, or if we go back to those requirements, they're very, very, very high. And so the Imam goes on and specifies this. He says, you must indeed know that a perfect shaykh is one who benefits the seeker through his activities, dealings and sayings, such that and that he observes and perfects the seeker whether present or absent. They say that the true benefit of a teacher, the real benefit, the greatest benefit of the teacher is the dua that he makes for his students on their behalf. That in itself, that's the true benefit. He said, you should know that it is imperative for the seeker who is in search of a shaykh should not blindly surrender himself completely to anyone said to be a shaykh that can guide on the path to Allah, until he knows with certainty that the shaykh is worthy of the description, until he can accept the shaykh with his whole heart. This is an extremely important point. So you'll have people saying, oh, tell me about this shaykh, or tell me who should I follow. This is something between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You go directly to Allah and you make dua. And the dua, some of the Salihin, what do they say? They say that there's a dua that one can make. Allahumma dullani ala man yadullini ilayk, wa awsilni ila man yusilni ilayk, wajma'ni ala man yajma'ni bik. Oh Allah, guide me to he who will guide me to you, and allow me to reach someone who will take me to you. And this goes back to this is and so making that dua with sincerity, if one has making that dua with sincerity and constantly repeating that dua, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will answer the muttar, will answer someone who's seeking this. And the Imam goes on, he says, similarly, it's imperative for the Shaykh, when a seeker comes to him asking to be led to the path of Allah, that he should not be permitted to enter it unless his sincerity has been tested and the extent to which he thirsts for someone to guide him to his Lord. They say of some of the mashayikh, the Ottoman mashayikh, that a wazir came to him. This was a minister in the government, someone with a high rank. And he says to him, and the minister says, I want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I want to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does the teacher tell him to do? He says, go out to the streets, to such and such a market, and start begging from people. Literally go out and beg. They say that Shaykh saw something in that man. He saw this kibr in him. He saw some arrogance in that person, some ujub. And he wanted to break it. He says, your only way is to do that. And so they say that this minister, he goes out and he sits and he starts begging. And he does this until people say this man has gone crazy. He's literally lost his mind. Because he used to be, and now he's begging. He says when he reached that state, then the Shaykh took him. And he was able to. Now, of course, the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, we know, al-mu'min la yudhillu nafsuh. A person, a believer does not humiliate himself. But sometimes what these people would do is that they reached a state where they were so desperate that they wanted to purify themselves, they wanted to reach Allah, they wanted to know Allah, that they would do anything. All these preconditions, the Imam goes on, he says, all these preconditions relate to the Shaykh, who one would give complete control over all decisions, and that is called Shaykh al-Tahkim. He says the seeker should remain with him, and this statement, like the body of a dead man in the hands of one washing it for burial, or like the baby in the mother's care. And this is problematic. This is a statement that some of the people who attack tasawwuf and they have a problem with this statement, that how can you give someone care, take over your affairs to such an extent, and of course one must, as Muslims and as people who follow the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have the utmost respect to all of our teachers, and what is meant by this is that person follow the teacher in anything that will draw them to Allah, that is in the confines of Sharia. So if the teacher is telling you need to be reading at least 3 juz's a day, or if that teacher is telling you need to focus on qiyam al-layl, you need to do, you follow. That's it, you follow. Not, it's mandoob, it's, do it. Why? Because he knows the medicine, the spiritual medicine that will make you better, that will purify your soul. If he says to you, you need to do 50,000 of istighfar, for example, do it. The the point of it is not to become some mindless person that just does everything that a sheikh tells them to do. But what the point that the Imam is trying to say is that just if you find that teacher that fulfills the conditions that he's mentioned, that you should have trust in that person, that they will help you and that they will guide you to the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know. And he says this does not apply to the sheikh. In other words, this states, this does not apply to the sheikh one is seeking blessings from, that is sheikh at-tabarruk. So some people will go and seek guidance from a sheikh, but for the sake of barakah, and meeting with them for the sake of barakah. This is whenever the seeker intends to get blessings and not put his affairs under the command of the sheikh. In other words, not be his mureed. Then the more sheikhs he meets, the more he visits them, seeking their blessings, the better. Really, the crux of it is, every sound teacher, if you ask every teacher, you ask them, what should I do? They'll say, just follow the Prophet. All they're doing is saying, they're pointing, they're saying, follow the Prophet ﷺ. What I'm telling you to do is I'm telling you so that you are able to follow him. If a seeker is not successful in finding a sheikh, then he should persevere in resolutely striving, and he should turn to Allah and take refuge in him with absolute sincerity, and express his need to him for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah grant him someone who will guide him. Surely he answers the one for he is the one who answers those in desperate need. So if one makes a dua, ittirar, one who's in desperate need of something, makes dua, then Allah will. The Salihin, what do they say? They say that if a person makes a true dua and is 100% sincere, then they will find the sheikh at their door. Surely he will be answered. He will answered by the one who answers those in desperate need, and Allah will send him a slave of his to take the seeker by his hand. No. Then he goes on that some people maybe that there is a teacher for them that they do not know about, that is making dua on their behalf, for example, and that is guiding them, even if he is unaware of it. But really, it's just vital to have a teacher. If one wants to be serious about the tradition, it's not enough to take one's tradition from books, but one really needs to strive in learning the tradition outwardly in terms of the sciences of fiqh and aqeedah, and inwardly in terms of the sciences of spirituality, how to purify the heart and do that. And he says, in reality, the vital factor is the truthfulness and sincerity of the seeker, because the true sheikhs exist aplenty. However, subhanAllah has hidden them. And he says, glorious is he who has made the evidence that points to his saints, the awliya, through the evidence that points to him, and has not made anyone reach them except those he, the exalted, wishes them to reach him, the Almighty. So he's saying that in order for a person to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they need a teacher, that they need a guide, and that they need a sheikh. In conclusion, in the khatimah, he says, O seeker, if you want something from your sheikh, or you have a question to ask, do not refrain out of awe of his status or fear of disrespecting his position with questioning him or asking him for something. Once, twice, 3 times, if you're not satisfied. And don't think it's courteous to refrain. So essentially he's saying, don't be just some blind follower. You have questions, ask them. You have some things that you're not quite that don't sit with your heart, that you don't feel comfortable with it, ask. The Prophet ﷺ, he'd be asked. He would ask his companions for advice. They would speak to him. There was this back and forth. In our tradition is not a tradition of blind belief. We don't believe in that. That's not our way. That's not the path. And so do not think that it is courteous to refrain from raising questions and asking for things, unless of course the Shaykh himself indicates that you should remain silent. Unless he tells you, I've given you, this is the answer, and maybe you've asked, I've repeated myself many times and you'll get your answer later, or if the Shaykh prevents you from doing something, or if he shows preference to someone else over you, beware of accusing him. Now there's just having adab with people, and this, some of these things just is basic courtesy to your fellow Muslim, having husn al-dhan with a fellow Muslim, let alone a person who you consider a guide to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is doing what? Beware of accusing. Don't have su'u dhan. Maybe he's preventing you from doing something. He says, maybe you shouldn't speak at this such and such event this time. Maybe you shouldn't do this, maybe you should do this. This is maybe for your own benefit. And be aware of accusing him. You must believe him, be convinced that he has your best interests at heart. It's essentially a relationship of love and trust. Any human relationship, with a teacher who's even teaching about the dunya, the first thing you need to establish with a teacher, it's very interesting that nearly every course I've taken, I'm seeking a master's in education. Every single course I'm taking about designing a course or teaching students, the first thing that they say that you need to do is you need to establish an environment of trust and a safe environment in which the student believes that you have their best interests at heart and that you truly care for them and that you empathize with them. If you've established that relationship, that's it. Then you can begin to start teaching them what they need to teach. This is in dunyawi matters. This is in matters of teaching physics or teaching English or teaching... What about the akhirah? Min bab awla. This is essentially common sense. If you have committed such a sin which you find is the cause of your shaykh's anger towards you, just as a student maybe does something that the teacher doesn't like, then be quick to apologize to him. After having repented to Allah, you go back to Allah, because this is ultimately the issue. The problem is that there's an issue with you and that you've disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then maybe the teacher is angry with you, seek forgiveness from them, just like you would a normal teacher even in the dunya. Because the reason I'm emphasizing this is people have, many people have issues with that. What are you talking about, trusting a shaykh, not accusing him, and we're Muslim, and I'm going to say what I think and say what is on my mind. And it's just, oftentimes it's just lack of adab and just people who have no courtesy. And we respect the salihin, we respect people in general. Be quick to apologize, having repented to Allah, until the shaykh becomes, is pleased. Right. He goes on, if you suspect change in the shaykh's feeling towards you. He's talking about this relationship that you have with one's teacher. That maybe that you find that the teacher is not pleased with you for something that you haven't done, then you must express that to him, have a conversation with him. It may be due to something that you did, or maybe that maybe it's nothing at all, or maybe that the shaitan is trying to do waswasa. And in that case, you should you should have that conversation with your teacher, so that your heart is at peace. And it goes back to just having that trusting relationship, so your heart is at peace to someone you can't have any exchange with someone that you are not settled in your heart with, whatever that person is teaching. This cannot happen. And this cannot happen if you, rather than talking about it, you keep it quiet in the knowledge that you've done nothing wrong. And he says, if you're a student who has great adab for his shaykh, respect, and treats him with the respect that is due to a shaykh, and believes and obeys what the teacher is telling you, and outwardly and inwardly, and has adab with them, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant you with benefit at the hands of the shaykh. In other words, you'll be someone who will be given from the enlightenment, from the truth, from the istiqamah, that you'll find that your state after that you find that, for example, you begin to do acts of worship that you didn't do before. You didn't do the rawatib, now you do the rawatib. You used to do a page of the Quran, now you do 3 juz's of the Quran. You used to make dhikr, la ilaha illallah 100 times a day, now it's 1,000 times a day. You didn't have good relations maybe with your neighbors, now suddenly you find that you have you have that sila with them, and maybe you had issues with people, problems with relatives, and now if you see this state, that if you fulfill this criteria, then you'll definitely invariably see the benefit from that, and the Imam says, such a seeker will inevitably inherit his secret or something from him or part of it. There's an epilogue that the Imam has. We'll read the Arabic and we'll translate it. We'll just go through it quickly after the Khatima. After the Tatimiyah, there's an epilogue. نذكر فيها شيئا الخاتمة نذكر فيها شيئا من أوصاف المريد الصادق. Here he's basically going to list some of the attributes of those who of a sincere seeker. He says some of the knowers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Gnostics, said that a true seeker is not a seeker until he is able to find in the Quran everything that he wants. He knows the difference between his shortfall and perfection. His needs become independent of the slaves by the Lord, and regard gold and dust as equal. لا يكون المريد مريدا حتى يجد في القرآن كل ما يريد. That he gets from the Quran everything that he wants, everything that he, and يعرف النقصان من المزيد. He knows shortfalls from perfection. ويستغني بالمولى عن العبيد. That he is dependent completely on Allah and completely independent of the servants of Allah. ويستوي عنده الذهب والصعيد. And gold and dust are equal in measure to him, in his eyes. And this comes from the hadith that the Prophet asked Haritha, كيف أصبحت, how are you doing this morning? And Haritha, one of the things he says that the dunya has become so little in my eyes that its gold and its dirt are now equal. In other words, I don't look for these things. The dunya has just completely fallen out, it's just completely out of my heart. And he says, السيكة من حفظ المريد من حفظ الحدود ووفى بالعهود ورضي بالموجود وصبر على المفقود. The seeker is one who observes limits of the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is mindful of his promises, and content with what he has, and has patience when he is deprived. He says the seeker is one who is thankful. المريد من شكر على النعماء وصبر على البلاء ورضي بمر القضاء وحمد ربه في السراء والضراء وأخلص له في السر والنجوى. The seeker is one who is thankful and grateful for the favors of Allah, and endures in trials and afflictions patiently, is content with the bitter decrees, and praises his Lord in times of ease and hardship, and remains true to him secretly and openly. The seeker is the one who is not enslaved to others except Allah, neither attached to rank and status or desires of any material forms. He's not someone, he doesn't, the outward status of people, he doesn't ogle at if he sees a famous celebrity and doesn't run to get their picture taken. He doesn't look at these things. You know, he's not someone who glorifies the dunya, he glorifies the deen. He says, Al-Mureed man shakar al-Ni'ama wa sabara wa hamida wa akhlas lahu fi sirri wa najwa. المريد من شكر على النعماء وصبر على البلاء ورضي بمر القضاء وحمد ربه في السراء والضراء وأخلص له في السر والنجوى. المريد من لا تسترقه الأغيار ولا تستعبده الآثار. These are, it's beautiful in Arabic because he's the words are, it's very beautiful. المريد من لا تسترقه الأغيار ولا تستعبده الآثار ولا تغلبه الشهوات ولا تحكم عليه العادات كلامه ذكر وحكمة وصمته فكر وعبرة فكرة وعبرة يسبق فعله قوله ويصدق علمه عمله شعاره الخشوع والوقار ودثاره التواضع والانكسار يتبع الحق ويؤثره ويرفض الباطل وينكره يحب الأخيار ويواليهم ويبغض الأشرار ويعاديهم خبره أحسن من خبره ومعاشرته أطيب من ذكره. SubhanAllah. I'll read the rest just in English. He says a seeker is one who's thankful and grateful upon the favors of Allah, endures trials and afflictions patiently, is content with bitter decrees, praises Allah in times of ease and hardship, and remains true to Him secretly and openly. A seeker is one who's not enslaved to others except Allah, neither attached to rank or status nor desired in material forms. A seeker is neither vanquished by lower desires or ambitions nor dominated by habits or culture. His words are invocation and wisdom. His silence is filled with reflection and heeding to examples, to good advice. His actions and deeds precede his words and are a proof of his knowledge. His marks are reverence and gravity. His clothes are humility and modesty. He follows truth and prefers it. He rejects falsehood and denies it. He loves the best of people and is their ally, and detests evil people and is their enemy. Dealing with him proves him better than dealing with him. This is beautiful. Dealing with him proves better than what is said about him. Some people, you hear great things about them, then when you finally meet them, you're pretty disappointed. The Salihin, if you hear about them, then you spend time with them, sit with them, you'll find that they're better than what you've heard. Keeping his company proves better than talking about him, than what is said about him. He helps others abundantly, but his own demands a little. He is far from frivolous. He is honest and trustworthy, neither lies nor betrays. Neither is he a miser nor a coward. He does not insult nor curse. He is not concerned with what is not his share, and is not stingy with what he has. His inner self is excellence, and is a state of excellence, and so are his intentions and his opinions. He keeps a distance from all evil, completely and entirely. He is intense in the deeds that draw him near to his Lord Most High. In other words, he's extremely serious about righteous deeds. Very, very serious about them. His desire for life on earth, for the dunya, for dunyawi life, he holds disdain for the dunya. He doesn't care about it. He does not repeat his errors. Whether he acts or refrains is not due to lustful motives. Loyalty and generosity are his companions. Modesty and having high morals are his trademark. He fulfills in full everyone's rights that are due to them, while never seeking the total of all his rights due to others. When he is given, he is thankful. When his rights are withheld, he is patient. When he commits an injustice, he repents and asks for forgiveness. When an injustice is committed against him, he pardons and forgives. He likes to remain unknown and hidden. SubhanAllah. He dislikes prominence and fame. He is grieved when his tongue speaks of what does not concern him. His heart is saddened by his shortcomings in obeying his Lord. He does not compromise his religious matters, nor does he please any creation, much that which causes displeasure to the Lord of the universe. You don't care who it is. If it's haram, you're not doing it. Done. You don't care if that person, whoever that person may be. If it's haram, it's haram. You know, because you have someone to answer to, Jalla Jalalu. You're a slave of Allah, not a slave of the servants of Allah, the creation of Allah. He finds solace in isolation and wahda, and being alone, and finds aversion to mixing too much with people. You know, being whenever you meet him, you find him performing acts of goodness or teaching the knowledge he has acquired. He is a man whom people expect goodness, never fear any form of evil from him. SubhanAllah. He does not repay harm with harm, nor does he shun those who shun him. He's like a palm tree who throws tender dates at you when you throw stones at it. He is like a soil in which all kinds of filth is thrown on it, but out of which grows beautiful things. The light of truthfulness emerges outwardly from him. What is seen on his face indicates what is hidden inwardly. He, the seeker, strives and aspires to please his Lord. He is eager and careful to follow his messenger. May Allah's blessings and peace be upon him, the beloved and chosen one, whom the seeker takes for example in all his affairs and follows in all manners. Actions and words in compliance with the command of his great Lord, his generous and noble book, whereby he, the exalted, says the following: وَمَا آتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُوا. So take what the messenger assigns to you and deny yourselves that which withholds or is forbidden from you. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says, this is a translation, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ لمن كان يرجو الله واليوم الآخر وذكر الله كثيرا. This is the translation. You have indeed in the messenger of Allah a beautiful pattern of conduct for anyone whose hope is in Allah and the final day, and who engages much in the praise and remembrance of Allah. وَمَنْ يُطِعِ الرَّسُولَ فَقَدْ أَطَاعَ اللَّهَ. And he who obeys the messenger obeys Allah. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يُبَايِعُونَكَ إِنَّمَا يُبَايِعُونَ اللَّهَ. Verily, those who pay fealty to you do no less than pay fealty to Allah, or plight their fealty to you, do no less than plight their fealty to Allah. قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ وَيَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ وَاللَّهُ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Say, if ye do love Allah, follow me, Allah will love you and forgive you your sins, for Allah is oft forgiving, most merciful. فَلْيَحْذَرِ الَّذِينَ يُخَالِفُونَ عَنْ أَمْرِهِ أَنْ تُصِيبُهُمْ فِتْنَةً وَيُصِيبُهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. Let those beware who withstand the messenger's orders, lest some trial befall them or a grievance penalty be inflicted on them. So you see, as the Imam goes on, so you see him extremely careful to follow the Prophet. May Allah's blessings and peace be upon him. Obey his command of his Lord, aspire to the generous promise, and flee the threat of suffering of the afterlife mentioned in those verses we quoted and those we left out, but which carry the same meaning. That is, good tidings of utmost success to the followers of the messenger. May Allah's blessings and peace be upon him, and warning of the utmost shame and disgrace to those who differ from him. And the Imam ends with a dua. Allahumma inna nas'aluka bismillahir rahmanir rahim alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen wa sallallahu alayhi ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Allahumma inna nas'aluka bi annaka anta Allahu alladhi la ilaha illa anta al-hannan al-mannan badi'u as-samawati wal-ardi dhil jalali wal-ikram أن ترزقنا كمال المتابعة لعبدك ورسولك سيدنا محمد في أخلاقه وأعماله ظاهرا وباطنا، وتحيينا وتميتنا على ذلك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم ربنا لك الحمد حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك وعظيم سلطانك. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. Alhamdulillah. The Imam Al-Haddad, he ends, he says, this treatise is now complete. It is a guidance for the seeker to whom is given firmness, support and right direction by his Lord, the praiseworthy, the glorious. It was dictated, praise to Allah, in 7 or 8 nights of Ramadan, the year 1071 from the Hijrah of the Prophet. May the best of blessings and peace be upon him. All praise and thanks to Allah, Lord of the universe. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.